So Jessie, first of all, thank you for doing this. I recognize it's the first time and technical glitches are normal, so it's okay. And I'm very, very excited to be here. I'd have been even more excited to hear Prithvi speak before me, simply because I've had the joy of working for Prithvi during his Accenture days. So it would have been fun to listen to Prithvi before I went. But nevertheless, here we are. Hi everyone, my name is Dhanya Rajeswaran. I'm the Director of Talent Strategy and Human Capital and Diversity for Accenture India. I've been with Accenture now for about 12 years and an overall industry experience of about 17. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know at what point it got muted. Should I start over again?
No, it's fine.
No, so Jessie, were you able to hear what I shared thus far, or was I speaking on mute?
No, we could.
Yes, Dhanya, we could hear the introduction, and we are sorry that Prithvi isn't able to go first, but we'll have him shortly on. And we did hear the introduction, so I think you could just continue.
Okay, sorry, I just saw mute sign on this thing and I got worried. All right, so good. So what I'm going to do is, I know I have about 15 minutes. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about what Accenture does, and then go into the specifics of why isn't it such a big mandate for us to look into employee experiences as HR professionals together, and how this journey is going to unfold. I was talking about performance achievement and the shift towards performance achievement, and I was saying this in context of how we are wanting to move towards creating employee experiences which put employees at the heart of it, right? When we moved away from performance management to performance achievement, some of the constant process, can we start having forward-looking conversations, because backward-looking was just not making any sense to the employee, to the organization, or to anybody. And more importantly, can those conversations be anchored in strengths of what the employee is really good at and what the employee can contribute and become stronger at, rather than trying to fix the faults of the employee, right? So it was a very, very big shift from the way performance management used to work, where everything was about, okay, this is the feedback you got, this is not what you did well, these are some things that went wrong, or so from the reactive to the more positive and something that is very actionable for employees. So this is just one of the big examples that I can point to. The other part of it is, when you talk about the experience for an employee and careers and their learning and how they're developing is such a huge part of it, right? There's enough research that says people do want to join growing organizations where they will be able to grow along with the organization. So a lot of focus definitely goes into making sure that people are able to take time away to learn and also learn all the time. And this is a very, very interesting juxtaposing of making sure that people have on-demand learning available to them anytime, anywhere, whether it is mobile enabled to making sure they can actually have access to mentors and others. And the other, which is taking literally the time away from their work to go and learn, and those would be our impactful classroom related courses. So there's some heavy investment in making sure that the organization, more so because the whole technology landscape is evolving at such a rapid pace that if learning is not an essential part of the DNA of both our people as well as the organization, then it's certainly not something that's set up for success. The third very big part of our employee experience internally is how we're able to create an inclusive and diverse environment for our people, and several things to point to in terms of where Accenture has made great strides We continue to invest heavily in women in leadership. We are focused on persons with disabilities, LGBT as a community, parents as a community. In simple words, I think Accenture takes the widest possible lens of diversity and values pretty much every aspect of it, right? And of course, we can do a separate session entirely on what goes on in diversity. But the reality is, an employee experiences an organization through their day-to-day interactions at the ground level, and if they are experiencing the feeling of being included, then that's a huge plus to what would add up into the overall employee experience bucket. When I began this session, if I was audible at that point, I spoke about the truly human angle, right? Considering the fact that we are in such a digitally enabled world, it's so important that we remember the whole person, and what we're doing is we're trying to integrate the whole truly human agenda into the way we do things, and the truly human agenda is literally a combination of 4 parts: mind, body, soul. They have a set purpose. While some of these are obvious, at least the physical part and the mental part are quite obvious in terms of why they are critical to success, I think when you talk about the heart and the soul, the connectedness that an employee feels with the organization, and more importantly, the connectedness to the larger purpose that every human being wants to serve for themselves. And I think that's really where we need to start tapping into those connections and make this possible. So, if I move away from Accenture and just talk a little bit about employee experience as a concept, and what are some of the things that we can do as we look at it. Clearly, every employee who joins an organization looks at these 5 things, the 5 big dials that they are looking at, right? The work, the people, the opportunity, the organization, and the rewards. It's pretty much these 5 that actually sum up the reason why an employee would choose to work with you versus another organization. And I really tend to believe that it's no longer an environment where people want to feel forced to work in a place, and people no longer feel forced to work in a place. There are so many opportunities both in traditional lines of work as well as non-traditional lines of work, and people are completely aware of what their alternatives are. So if they choose to walk in through your doors every morning to be part of your organization, it's because of these that actually make them stick. And therefore, when we start thinking about what does it mean, and especially with the millennials, the whole sense of purpose and meaning takes a whole different angle, because it, people want to be part of something that's larger than themselves. People want to be in an environment where they're working with people who are better than themselves, people who will challenge them, people who will motivate them, right? And they want the opportunity to make a difference, and they absolutely want to work in a place where there is credibility for the organization. They don't want to be associated with any negativity that surrounds any organization. They want to be in a place where it's known for something, it's known for its integrity, and of course rewards. But CEB reports always say that rewards does not feature at least in the top 3 of what people tend to look for in a workplace. So with this in mind, and Jessie, you alluded to this in the beginning of the session when you were setting context, to say when we talk about employee experience, there is this big shift that we as HR need to make, and we need to make that shift from what we have traditionally done with the mindset of making it work for the organization to making it work for the employee. And I think that's the biggest shift that is the need of the hour. And one of the biggest reasons that it's the need of the hour is employees' experiences or expectations are very liquid, and we call it the liquid expectations, right? So if I'm outside of work and my Uber app actually is hyper personalizing things to the extent that, when I need a cab, where I need a cab, and it's there, and there's absolutely seamless way in which some of my services get delivered through the apps these days or the digital environment these days. Those expectations continue to exist when the employee walks in through your doors in the morning. So it's not like the employee is going to believe that, okay, some things are possible outside of work and some things are possible inside of work. I think where organizations have a role is to make sure that the experience that an employee feels internally is as seamless as they would feel externally. And I think that is where, when we think about how the processes have been designed historically, they've been designed with the intention of, let me reduce risk, let me make sure that I have more controls in the place, let me make sure that this works because it's logistically easier for me to work. From that mindset to actually saying, I may have 140,000 employees, but they're unique human beings. Is there a way that I can hyper personalize their environment? Is there a way that they just walk in through the door and they're able to book their meeting rooms seamlessly without having to come in and open their laptop and log in and do the things that they would do traditionally, to saying what is it that we can do? And again, let's not forget that automation is such a big part of it, where we could think of digital advisors to start helping our employees become far more efficient and effective in the way that they work. And there are several things that are being experimented as we speak, not just at Accenture but across the board, to see how we can make this whole promise of liquid expectations come to life for people. The other part of it is, again, anchoring back to the fact that employees are human beings, and for human beings, there are some things that just tugs at you, and those are the moments that make you connect, right? And we call these the moments that matter. And when you think of just yourself as an employee, and you think of the organizations that you've worked with, you might remember some critical points that are so fresh in your memory, no matter how many years have passed by, right? And those could be moments in which your supervisor did something for you, or your colleague did something for you, or the organization did something for you. And I think the whole experience gets defined by these few moments that matter. This diagram sort of brings it to life at three stages, right? At the core of it is what the employee feels as their impact and contribution, impact on them as well as the impact they have on the organization and their contribution. Second is the connectedness and growth. This talks directly to the people's aspirations of wanting to grow and evolve. And the third part of it, quite honestly, is periphery, which is probably one of the toughest to fix, is the whole enablement piece, the investment in technologies and the investment in processes and programs. So when you look at this diagram, you actually tend to think that, it's the simple things that matter the most, which is the core of what employees want, and not so much everything else. But all of this comes together as a package for our people to bring employee experience to life. And I think that that the culture in which this is anchored makes it so critical. And you see some words on the left hand side, which is about personalized, intuitive, transparent, and appreciative. And I must say that when we talk about culture, the old-fashioned values that we would hold stead continue to be in fashion. People still value your honesty and your directness, and people still value the ability to do decent, honest contributions and to flow both ways from the organization. So I know I'm out of time, but Jessie, I'm going to pause here. The idea is that employee experience is definitely a culmination of what goes in terms of tools, processes, and enablement. But the ones that really stick to the employee are the moments that matter. And I think as HR people, as we start focusing on those moments that matter, we will be able to make bonds with our people to the extent that they would be willing to forgive anything that happens within the organization. So Jessie, with that, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great. We just have one question from the audience, which is, is there a way to link the employee experience to better retention? Because that's a specific question that we have.
Well, definitely yes. And when I say definitely yes, retention is the most tangible benefit that arises out of employee experience. And if your question is about quantifying how do you do that, I think the criticality will be in identifying these moments that matter, right? Because if you're able to figure out at what points does an employee make a decision to either stick to the organization or quit the organization, and then be able to start, measuring it, because there's some that's very obvious, right? And I spoke to you about the 5 things that that employees look for. But if you want to get deeper into the topic, I think it's the moments that matter that hold the key to this.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you so much, Dhanya. I think I've got a lot of insights out of this one. And if there are questions at the end, again, I hope we can just, either connect offline or just share them. So I'm going to hand this over to Prithvi now. And Tuhina, if you could make Dhanya the presenter for that.
Or let me share my screen, which I've just done. I'm not sure if everybody can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So let me start. First of all, apologies for the technology challenges. I guess both of us being from technology companies, we bring our luck with us. But it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting us and joining. It's good to hear Dhanya and hear what, the thought leadership that my alumni company continues to make in her good hands. So let me share with you a little bit about what we are seeing on this topic as we sort of think about HCL. From our perspective, we basically a company that has over the last few years come to be known as with a management model of employees first, customers second, and having driven a growth story over the last 10, 12 years by embracing some of the tenets that EFCS talks about. Some of you may have read the book. And that has always remained core for us. As we've sort of evolved, we've recognized that the core fundamental of our business to create value, and the people who bring the best of what HCL has to offer to our clients are really our people. And the expectation on the organization represented by its leaders is really what we call about inverting the pyramid, which is a core tenet of EFCS, and really to engage, enable, and empower our employees to do so. And we believe that by putting the employees first, the customer essentially will never feel second. Our job really revolves around enhancing the value zone between what an employee and a customer in the interactions that they have. And the way we do that is really saying that experience leads to 3 things. It leads to engagement of the employee, it leads to enablement and empowerment. It's not about, I think, a lot of conversations that I tend to run into where experience seems to be about the efficiency of service delivery, or if you talk to a lot of employees, it's not about the Friday pizza party or the outing, which is more seen as entertainment. So I think it's important to recognize that for us, experience has become an area that reflects our culture, reflects our value system, and we see it as the manifestation of what we expect leaders to provide employees who are, at the end of the day, always have the choice whether they'll come back the next day or not. And we see our leaders as having the prime responsibility to ensure that this is an experience that people want to keep returning to. If I move on to the next slide, we've sort of over the last, I think about 12, 18 months, we've sort of see this as multiple areas that impact this concept. One, as I've been speaking about, is our employee first promise and the tenets that comes with around being authentic and honest. What we call mirror. I've talked a little bit about the need for ownership, which is around recasting the role of the CEO and really having leaders and employees feel a sense of ownership about what kind of environment that they're creating and culture that they're creating and what kind of work they're doing. We believe that it's very important to build trust and be transparent. And of course, the fourth, which really sums it up in this area, is really around inverting the pyramid. We've been doing a lot of research based on insights of our workforce. We are about 111,000 people now in about 30 plus countries, as to what the 21st century employee really looks for or how he behaves. And as I think Dhanya mentioned, some of the core things don't go away. And even here we find that at the end of the day, the 21st century employee is somebody who values collaboration, he values creativity and creation of new things. He tends to be somebody who has much broader networks and listens to many more sources than possibly earlier generations did. About their career and doesn't outsource it industry. And I think they're looking for that to translate into good career growth. They're looking for integrating work-life balance. They're looking for a work environment that helps them do good work, learnings, and I think growing in a growing place in many geographies, stability in the jobs that they have. So this is the landscape in which we are operating. We've sort of over the last 2-3 years, we've been talking to many employees, and we sort of distilled, at least for us, down to 5 things. People who feel that the experience is being delivered, and we have various processes and frameworks by which we capture evidence that this experience is happening in the manner that it's been promised. People want to feel cared for. They want to work with people from different cultures and different with diversity of thought. They want to feel that they're learning. They want to feel they're growing, and they want to make sure that they have the opportunity to care for their customer, so that their customer demonstrates appreciation for the value that they are adding. So this is the sort of landscape that we believe we are dealing with in our organization currently. And from an HR perspective, if you look at it from a process mindset, which is where very many times we tend to do. If I move on to the next slide, and somebody is just sharing his video with me, so I'm not sure. So Sheer, your video is actually telecasting, yeah. So if you look at across the employee life cycle, we look at 3 stages in that life cycle. Experience as a candidate, and then experience when an employee comes in within a project, and experience maybe beyond the project. We've identified within this area about 15 different what we call touch points, but are really moments. I think Dhanya referenced it as moments of, I forget the word you used, but the moments that where an employee truly feels that the promise that the organization made to him, is it being delivered or not? A moment of truth, so if you call it that. I think they want to make sure that these moments of truth reflect what our culture is. We talk about ourselves as an ideapreneurship. Our business strategy is really a culture-led strategy of seeding, nurturing, harvesting value and ideas for our clients. They want to make sure that these touch points enable them to maximize the impact that they have in this kind of culture, and that they build, that leads to a place which values them, it makes them feel included, and helps them build relationships that go beyond the contract internally as well as with our clients. So our focus over the last few years has really been to make sure that we keep improving how we deliver these various touch points. The journey is, is in some areas much more mature. In some areas it needs further work, and we measure this closely, looking at how aware people are about what we're doing, whether there is advocacy and people are talking about what we're doing, and how much have they assimilated and adopted some of the practices, programs that we have in place that bring these touch points to life. I would say, I think there's a high degree of awareness and of advocacy in most areas. A little bit of I think some areas we need further work, especially in the assimilation and adoption stage. So all this, at the end of the day, if I go to the next slide, is really with the aim of what we believe is to make the employee happy. And our happiness construct that we look at essentially tries to ensure that beliefs that we have that I talked about are aligned to the programs that we have, are aligned to the behaviors we expect, and lead to the outcomes that we want. If we can make this kind of culture come alive, we believe there is alignment between the work context, what the worker is looking for, and what the workplace offers as an organization. And if that comes together, we find more and more people who are finding alignment in these areas feel much more engaged, enabled, empowered to do their best. There's of course a social context in which they operate, which varies in different countries, different geographies, different generations, which we need to understand. But our aim is really to ensure that there's this feeling of alignment when HCL and what they're experiencing. And our role is really to ensure that those influences are positive, so that people go away saying that I'm happy if I enjoyed my induction experience, they're happy with their manager, their work is a motivation for them, they like the people they work with, they're learning new skills, they believe there's a career path for them. We can't shy away from the fact that people expect fairness in their pay, and of course the conditions are safe, secure, and make them more effective to do what they need to do. So that's really where we spend a lot of our time to make sure that these influences are positive. They create a distinctive experience. We spend a lot of time with our leaders trying to ensure that they understand that their job is to engage, enable, and empower people by inverting what we call the pyramid. And we believe this unlocks really people's proficiency, translates potential into performance, and makes people feel much happier if they feel that their skills are growing up, their potential is being tapped, and they are being recognized for what they are contributing, and they feel that their time is being used well, and they're being able to do what they want, not just at the place of work, but also in their lives, and they're being productive on both sides. And this leads them to be much more happy. Over the last few years, we've sort of moved from measuring people's engagement, how passionate they are, and how happy they are, and we continue to have pockets where we see people across all three zones. Overall, our organization continues to improve every day, and we are happy. That is where we are at the moment. But I think it's a day-to-day role that I think people need to play, not just HR, not just the line leader, but every employee, to make the people that they interact with feel that this is an experience that they want to keep returning to. Let me stop there. There are a couple of other slides at the back which you guys can take a look at if of interest. Otherwise, I'll hand it back, and I'm happy to take any questions that there may be.
Thanks so much, Prithvi, and sorry for the little bit of technical difficulties we've had. There is one question for you which came in, which was in one of your earlier slides, you had mentioned do not outsource career. Yeah, this one, doesn't outsource career. What does that mean, and what does it imply from an HR perspective?
I think one of the things that we've been working very hard over the last few years is that we must try to start treating people as adults. And I think it basically means that, you know, when you make decisions about your life and which car to buy, how much taxes to pay, you know, what, you know, where do you want to go for a holiday, you don't outsource that decision yourself, people may share, etc. And you don't outsource that. Similarly, it's interesting as to why in some organizations and in some teams, we find a lot of expectation that either the manager will tell me how my career will get better, or how will I get promoted, how will I earn more money, how will I change my project, or they expect HR to do that. And you know, I think one of the things we've been pushing, and we've been running as a program we call Design You 2.0, is really that you are accountable to recast your role as a CEO of your own career and really design the next version of yourself.
Got it. So take control of your career. Do not expect the organization to manage it.
That's right.
There's one more question for you, which was, other than the ESAT survey, is there any other approach to measure engaged, empowered, and enabled employees?
Yes, you know, we have a process where any employee can raise a query or a grievance or a ask for information to what we call a smart service desk. And the only people who can actually raise a ticket or rather the only people who can close that ticket that is raised is the employee himself, once they feel they have all the information or their grievance is addressed or their question is answered. So that we track very closely. The number of queries that come in or the inputs that come into the smart service desk, every interaction with an HR person is captured on the smart service where they need more support or intervention. The smart survey is not really an engagement survey. It's much more of a survey that goes out triggered by certain experiences. So for example, if your project manager has changed, you will get 3 questions and ask for how that's going. If you've just completed training, you will get 4 questions which will say, how was that experience? If you've just received a pay change, we'll ask you whether you know why you got how much you got. We never ask the question, you know, whether you're happy with how much you got. Or if you just transferred cities, we ask whether that you settled in or how that experience went. And then of course there are basic process in analytics that we do. You know, what is the service levels in terms of responding to ask. So an employee may raise a workflow, a work activity. He wants a salary verification letter, or he wants to or the performance management process timelines. How long has it taken him to get feedback? So we do a lot of analytics on that. So we've invested a lot of time and effort really to apply analytics into our service delivery information and draw more and more insights from there. So it's not just a survey, it's really multiple sources of insight that we draw to tell us how we are doing in delivering the experience.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Prithvi and Dhanya as well. I think we've had a great session and we've run a little bit over time. Thanks so much to all of you for your patience. And this is our first webinar. We do hope it's the first of many. For those of you who haven't yet signed up for the India CHRO Forum, I do hope you will join this community. And thank you so much for joining us today. The recording will also be available shortly. Thank you.